Hello, hello, hello. This is Minister J. I am the founder and lead servant of B2B Ministries, which stands for Born to Battle Ministries. Just a reminder that when God created each one of us, He placed everything that we would need on the inside of us in order to win, to defeat, to overcome, and be victorious in every battle that we face. Thus, when God created us, He created each one of us already born to battle. Again, this is Minister Jay, and I thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to join with me today, this Wednesday, April 26th, for our Words of Wisdom Wednesday. That's right, starting every Wednesday, it will either be a video or a live feed explaining different things of the Bible or even aspects of life that I may be experiencing that I think may be able to encourage or help someone else every Wednesday on this YouTube channel, Born to Battle, on this Facebook page, Born to Battle. We will have Words of Wisdom Wednesday. Wow Wednesday. Again, every Wednesday starting today, which is April 26, 2023. So let's just get into it. Today, for a topic, we're going to use getting out is not always easy, but it is worth it. Again, just in case you didn't catch it the first time, getting out is not always easy, but it is worth it. That is going to be our topic for today's Wow Wednesday, Words of Wisdom. So often we find ourselves in situations that we ask God to get us out of. We're uncomfortable in them. We want to see a change in our circumstances. We want things to appear differently than what our reality currently is. So, in other words, we want God to get us out of it. But the question then becomes, are we willing to take the necessary steps or endure the hardships that come with God getting us out of whatever we may currently be in? So, today for a scripture, I have a few scriptures I'm going to read. Familiar story. Most of us know about the children of Israel leaving Egypt, being led out by their Redeemer, who was Moses, that was chosen of God. And that is where we're going to start today. So, Exodus chapter 3, verses 9 and 10. And then we're going to go over to Exodus chapter 5, verses 6 and 8. And as I'm reading these passages, I want you to remember the topic for today is getting out is not always easy, but it is worth it. So, Exodus chapter 3, starting at verse 9. Look, the children of Israel, look, the cry of the people of Israel has reached me, and I have seen how harshly the Egyptians abused them. Now go, for I am sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people Israel out of Egypt. Let me read that for you one more time. Again, Exodus chapter 3, verses 9 and 10 from the New Living Translation. And it states, Look, the cry of the people of Israel has reached me, and I have seen how harshly the Egyptians abused them. Now go, for I am sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people, Israel, out of Egypt. Then skipping over to chapter 5, verses 6 through 8. Again, chapter 5, verses 6 through 8. And it reads, That same day, Pharaoh sent out this order to the Egyptian slave drivers and the Israelite foremen. Do not supply any more straw for making bricks. Make the people get it themselves, but still require them to make the same number of bricks as before. Don't reduce the quota. They are lazy. That is why they are crying out, Let us go and offer sacrifices to our God. The word of God is blessed. Now, again, I did say this is a familiar passage. You know, most of us know some part of the story of the children of Israel being led out of Egypt. However, there are some intricate parts that are often skipped over when this story is being told. Yes, we see Moses as the redeemer. Yes, we're most of us are acquainted when this Red Sea was parted. Most of us are acquainted when the I'm sorry, when Pharaoh's army rather was chasing after the children of Israel. Some of us may even be familiar with God being the light in the day and the night that was leading them through the wilderness in order to get to the promised land. So, in some way, most of us are familiar with the story of Moses, the Redeemer, leading the children of Israel out of Egypt. Maybe you're more familiar with the plagues that were brought upon the land. Maybe you've heard about the flies and the frogs and the lice and the boils. Or maybe you aren't familiar with how the darkness came over the land or how the hail rained down from heaven nonstop. Maybe these are parts of the things of the redeeming of the children of Israel you're not aware of. But what I want to point out today is the children of Israel cried and asked God to be relieved of these hard taskmasters for over 430 years. Now, if you think about the number of generations that were born and died and born and died in slavery under the reign of the pharaohs, the different pharaohs over time in Egypt, that is a lot of people. And then God had made a promise to Abraham that his children, his descendants, those that would be of his bloodline, would multiply such to a great number that they would not be able to be numbered as the grains of sand on the seashore. So, over this 430 years, not only have numerous people been born and died, but the children of Israel have continued to increase. They've continued to grow. So, as they were in the land of Egypt, just think about the number of slaves that the Egyptians had at their hand because there were so many children of Israel and they were all slaves. So, over this time, they'd been praying and crying out, God, send us a redeemer, send us a savior, send us someone to get us out of this slavery. And at this point, God had raised up Moses to speak on his behalf. I encourage you to go back and read this story and see the intricate details to this story because not only was he raised in the Pharaoh's home, and then he ended up being exiled or exiled himself after killing an Egyptian and spent 40 years in a whole other land. Then he came back after he saw God speaking to him through the burning bush. So there are so many layers to this story. But the point that I'm trying to bring us to today is that when God chose Moses to rescue his people, it was because God had heard the cries of his people for over 430 years. Now, why did it take 430 years? We will never know because the Bible tells us that his ways are not our ways and his thoughts are not our thoughts. So we will never know why it took 430 years or why he allowed it to be 430 years. But we do know that at 430 years, God sent Moses back to rescue his people. So God did hear the cry of his people, although they may have felt that they were crying out to an abyss and nothing was being done. God wasn't hearing them. There were no results to the prayers that they had been praying. They even saw that there were no results to the prayers that were prayed by their grandparents, their great grandparents. They may have been born as babies and now they're old men or old women and they're still saying, we're praying these same prayers, but God is not answering our prayers. But just because they were not being answered in that 430 years, this is proof that God still heard their prayers. So, because God heard their prayers, he sent Moses to redeem the children of Israel, to bring them over into the promised land, to keep his covenant that he had made so many generations back with Abraham, that the children of Israel would reign, would live, would grow, would prosper in the land of milk and honey that he had promised his people. But the point I'm getting to in this story is when Moses went and spoke to the Pharaoh. He told the Pharaoh what God had said, let his people go to worship him a 3 days journey away. Pharaoh did not want to let go of all these slaves, all the people that he had working for him, all the people that they had doing all the hard labor. So what did he do? He made it so that the children of Israel, the slaves, those who were doing all the hard labor, were never let up on. But he took away a part of what was being used in order to do their job. Now you think about it, you go into work every day and you have the utensils, you have the tools, you have the things that you need to do your job. You have a computer, you have a desk, you have a camera if you're doing something on social media. You have what you need in order to do what your job is. Now just imagine if your supervisor came in, your manager came in, the higher ups came in and said, I still want you to do your job, but I'm taking away your computer. You figure out how to get back online because I still want you to do the same job that you've been doing, but I'm taking away your computer because someone has come and talked to me on your behalf, and I wasn't happy with what they told me, so I'm going to make it hard on you. That, in essence, is what happened to the children of Israel. Although God heard their cry, heard their prayer, and sent Moses to redeem them, when he sent Moses to redeem them, the head taskmaster, the Pharaoh, decided, well, since they want to go worship, they must just be lazy. They don't want to do what it is I've told them to do. So, in order for me to make it harder on them and to prove to them that I am in charge, I'm going to take away the straw that they use to make the bricks, but they still have to make the bricks and they've got to figure out a way to make it happen. I'm not going to relinquish the amount that's required of them, but I'm going to make it harder on them. So, again, our topic today is getting out is not always easy, but it's worth it. If you go back and read this story, it goes on to say that the children of Israel went and they gathered the little stubble that they could find. They found the pieces of straw that they could get in order to continue to make these bricks. They were not happy. They were not happy with Moses. They were not happy with Aaron. They were not happy with God sending them in order to make their jobs worse, harder, to make their lives, even to the point of where the Pharaoh could kill them if they did not continue to produce the amount of bricks that were required. They were not happy, but God had a plan. God had already gone before them. God had already come back to walk with them, and God was going to lead them out of the torment, the torture, the hard taskmasters, and the things that they were enduring. But the key point that they had to do was get through the test that God was providing them to go through, or having them to go through in order to get to the other side. So, what I'm saying to you today is you may be in a situation that's not comfortable, and you ask God to get you out of it. You ask God to change your circumstances. You ask God to change the situation that you are in. But before it gets better, it may just get worse. And I want to encourage you today that if it gets worse, if it gets harder, if it becomes even more to bear than what you were bearing before you ask God to get you out of it, don't quit when it gets harder. Don't throw in the towel when things seem to become more hectic in your life, when things seem to become heavier in your heart, when things seem to become darker in your line of sight. Do not give up in the press. Do not give up in the victory that is already yours. Do not give up because you do not know the plans that God already has for you, because the Bible tells us he has already made a plan for us before we were born. So when you were asking God to get you out of it, you may have been asking 10 years, 20 years, 10 months, 2 months, however long you've been in whatever you are facing, that you've been asking God, and it seems that God has gone without hearing your prayer. Know that if you prayed with a sincere heart, know that if you prayed with a faith the size of a grain of a mustard seed, that God heard you, and you can still speak to that mountain and tell it to be removed, and it will be cast into the sea. However, it will all happen in God's timing, and it will happen with the plan that God has already laid out. You may not understand why you're still having to climb a higher mountain. You may not understand why it seems like the valley seems to be getting even lower and harder to get out of. You may not understand why that loved one seems to be coming at you harder than they were before. You may not understand why it seems that your finances are not lining up and you seem to be more broke now than you were before you asked God to give you more. You may not understand it, but just because you don't understand it does not mean that the plan of God is not taking place. So just remember that getting out of it may not always be easy, but I promise you it will be worth it. So we all know that this story goes on to say the Red Sea was parted. They ended up going into the promised land. Joshua had them walk around the walls of Jericho and they fell down. So when it was all said and done, and the plan of God was walked all the way through, regardless of how many generations it took for it to get there, God kept his promise, God kept his covenant, and God brought the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt into the land of milk and honey. So don't give up in the press. Don't give up when it seems harder. Don't give up because the plan of God is still working in your favor, and I guarantee you it will be worth it. So, again, that is our words of wisdom for this Wednesday. I do hope there was an encouragement to someone to let you know that God has not forgotten about you. Perhaps you have a prayer request that you would like for us to join in with prayer with you for. Feel free to email it to our new email address. It is Minister J at B2B, excuse me, Minister J at born the number two battle.com. It's a new email, so I have to remember. It is Minister J at born the number two battle.com. We do have a new website that's being vamped as I speak with you, which is why we also have the new email address. God is doing some great and mighty things that others may be reached and that others may have hope and know that although they are in a battle, God created them born to battle just as he did each one of us. So I encourage you today to repeat after me as you start your day or wherever you are in your day. Repeat after me. There is absolutely nothing that will happen to me this day that God and I together cannot handle. Make that a part of your daily mantra. There is absolutely nothing that will happen to me this day that God and I together cannot handle. Again, I am Minister J. I am the lead servant of B2B Ministries, which stands for Born to Battle Ministries. Just a reminder that when God created each one of us, he placed everything that we would need on the inside of us in order to win, to defeat, to overcome, and be victorious in every battle that we face. Thus, when God created us, he created each one of us already born to battle. Until next Wednesday, make it a blessed week and know that God has not forgotten about you. But also remember the thought of today getting out is not always easy, but I promise you it will be worth it. Be blessed.